I'm Angela. It's been a minute. Turns out that teaching on Zoom full-time makes you hate all screens. But we are back in the classroom, and while I have not been filming, I have been writing. So I wanted to catch y'all up a little bit on what I've been working on. And then also in the past 2 months, I've also started submitting things. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that as well. So back at the beginning of 2020, I had two main writing goals. The first was to attend more cons, and the second was to apply to Clarion, which is a speculative fiction writer's workshop for short fiction. Neither of those happened because of the plague. But I did start writing more short fiction, sort of with that goal of trying to apply to Clarion. And basically, after July of 2020, after the camp in 2020, where I wrote 50,000 words in a project, after that, I switched entirely from long form stuff to shorter fiction. I've been now for a little over a year writing exclusively short stories and then flash fiction. My big picture goal is to eventually be eligible for SFWA, which is the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association. So what that means is that I am mostly at this point applying to what are considered pro markets, which pay at least 8 cents a word. And my short-term goal is to get 20 rejections because I can't really control if people accept my stories, but I can sort of control how many rejections I get. I am up to either 13 or 14 right now, so we're humming along. It's definitely sort of taken time to build up momentum around submitting stories. It feels very much like I've sort of added on parts of my writing process. So I sort of know what outlining and drafting and revising looks like for me, but really it does feel like in a lot of ways now I've sort of added on sort of this back part of my whole writing process where then I have to write cover letters, which are not at all that big a deal when submitting in short fiction markets, but we're still a learning curve, and find out like what markets are currently accepting, what markets do I think would be the best fit. So I really feel like I do have sort of this back end that I am adding on to my writing process, and that logistical stuff, that knowledge around like what markets should I be looking at and considering, all of that has been definitely the hardest part of this process. And I'm really grateful to the people in my life that have been able to help me with that. I feel like I'm at the point now where I've done 1 or 2 major rounds of submission and rejection. I have like 4 short stories, so between 2,000 and 6,000 words that are sort of out on rotation, and then a couple of shorter pieces. And I do feel like I'm starting to get to the point where I kind of know what I'm doing, but also now I'm trying to add fiction writing back in because I had like a huge backlog. And so for a while I was just really doing revisions on stories and then also working on sending things out, following up on submissions, tracking submissions, all of that. And so now that I'm trying to sort of like get to a place where I'm regularly submitting and I'm drafting and school is back in session, I'm still definitely working on finding that balance. But I feel like I'm making progress. I've had a couple of stories get to like the second round at different publications, which is exciting. I've also noticed that I've sort of started to think a little bit more commercially, thinking at least about length and things like that in a way that up until very recently, I've been very sort of like opposed to thinking about where my work would fit in the market, which I think when you're sort of like pretty far out from publication can be a useful thing. But there does come a point where some level of practicality, some level of how do I fit in the market, what am I trying to do, is valuable. The thing that most surprised me was how discouraging rejections can be, which sounds a little bit naive, but I came in feeling like I would have a really good time managing my expectations. I've spent a lot of time watching people try and make it traditionally published. I have a couple of friends in real life who have been submitting for years. And I also in college worked on a literary magazine, so I was on sort of the other end of things, choosing submissions, looking at them that way. And so I feel like I had a pretty good sense of A, the importance of persistence, and then B, the extent to which you can have really great work that just doesn't fit in the magazine, either in general or in that particular edition. And so I felt like I had a pretty good appreciation for that, and I kind of thought I could just keep my expectations really low coming in. What I found is that that's not really true. Honestly, the biggest thing I feel like I've learned is the value of kind of cultivating hope and acknowledging that like I do want to succeed. In a couple of cases, especially these are stories that I'm pretty proud of, that it would be really cool to see find a home And so accepting that hope and accepting that those are things that I want has actually been really beneficial, but is something that for me at least is super counterintuitive. So I'm kind of walking that line. The other thing that's been difficult has been managing my reading life. So I tend to be someone that reads a lot of novels, at least by some standards. I read at least like one or so a week, sometimes more. And obviously when I started writing short fiction, I needed to start reading a lot more short fiction as well. So that's something I've been doing, right? I've been reading sort of collections and then also the different publications that I would like to be published in, so I can get a sense of the market and all of the things that go along with that. But I've had a really hard time balancing both reading short fiction and reading novels. I feel like for sort of my mental health and just my creative well-being, it's really important to me to have long form fiction that I am reading at any given time. But short fiction, I think, has been really important for developing my writing. So that has been a really tricky balance to find, particularly because I am apparently very Goodreads motivated, and so not being able to log short stories in the same way that I could log a novel is frustrating to me, and then falling behind on my Goodreads count because I'm reading less novels, because I'm reading more short fiction, is also stressful. So I'm really trying to figure out how to reorient myself there so that I can get kind of the reading I need as a person and the reading I need as a writer. So yeah, that's really about it. That is what I have been doing. I am hoping to start coming back on here more, but I am also still trying to find an equilibrium with working in person and writing. So we'll see how things go. Thank you all so much. Have a great day and be well. Bye, loves.